This experience happened in 2017. At that time, I was experiencing some difficulties at work. There had been some disconnect between my colleagues and I. There was a lack of effective communication and trust between us. I felt like I was always excluded from the team and didn't get the support and respect I deserved, which made me feel uncomfortable. At work, there was a lack of cooperation and collaboration between colleagues, and we did not accomplish our tasks well. In addition, I found myself deficient in many areas. The skills are not skilled enough, the thinking is not quick enough, and it is hard to find solutions to problems. This made me feel inferior and helpless, and I felt as if I was a useless person. Just then, I remembered an old friend of mine who had a lot of experience and skills in his work and also knew very well how to get along with people. I realized that talking to him might give me some help and a way to solve my problems. So I called him and asked if he was free in the evening and if we could have dinner together. He quickly said yes to my invitation, and I felt very happy. During the chat with him, I got a lot of inspiration and advice. I re-examined my work and life, and I learned how to get along and cooperate with my colleagues. The gathering was very meaningful to me and made me feel soothed and improved. At about 10 p.m., I felt a little tired and decided to drive home to rest. But just as I was driving around a corner, I suddenly saw a car crossing the road in front of me. I was too late to brake and hit the car. The impact was so violent that I heard an ear-splitting sound of metal scraping and cracking. My body was in great shock. I felt my head hit the steering wheel. My consciousness slowly began to blur and my vision began to become blurry. I felt very scared and uneasy. I tried to lift my head, but found it in great pain, as if it was about to explode. I kept rubbing my head, trying to keep myself conscious. However, my mind started to become confused and I felt that I was out of control and could not stay awake. It felt like everything around me was slowly disappearing. Suddenly, I found myself in a dark tunnel. The tunnel was very quiet. I saw a bright light appear at the end of the tunnel. The light seemed very bright and dazzling, attracting me to keep walking forward. I finally reached the end of the bright light and I saw a beautiful angel waiting for me there. She had glowing wings, wore a white robe, and had a friendly smile on her face. I was amazed, for I had never seen such a beautiful sight before. The angel approached me and said in a gentle voice, "Please don't be afraid, it is safe here and I am here to greet you." The angel led me to a spacious room. The room was amazing, it was like a movie theater, but without a ceiling. The light in the room was very soft and made people feel very comfortable and relaxed. There was a screen in the center of the room, and the screen began to show my past life. There were some good memories and some not so good experiences. There were a few things that stood out to me. I saw the following scene. On the occasion of my grandmother's 80th birthday, my whole family came to this special celebration. My family lives on the edge of town and my grandmother's family is in the mountains, so every trip to my grandmother's house needs to be planned well in advance. When we arrived at my grandmother's house, she was in the garden chatting with the neighbors. When she saw us, she was very happy. We went into the house together and my grandmother had prepared a lot of fruits and pastries. We sat together in the living room. Grandma took out a guitar and started singing a folk song from her hometown. We were all infected by Grandma's singing and sang along with her. The whole room was filled with joy. This memory made me feel very happy and satisfied, and I experienced the warmth and affection between family members in this scene. On the screen, I saw some bad things I had done, such as unintentionally hurting people around me, saying hurtful words, and some dishonorable behaviors. At work, there were some disagreements between a colleague and me. We had a difference in our views and handling of a project. I thought my solution was better, but my colleague presented her idea. In the ensuing discussion, I did not listen carefully to my colleague's ideas, but insisted on my own point of view. It was even a bit cold and arrogant. This made my colleague feel neglected and disrespected. Later, our interaction at work became more unfriendly. When I saw the bad things I had done, I felt very ashamed and remorseful. I tried to apologize to the angel, but instead of scolding me, the angel gave me an encouraging smile. Next, I saw the scene I least wanted to remember. I saw the mistakes I had made in my relationship. I already had a girlfriend at the time, but I was still dating another girl. I thought at the time that I could handle this kind of thing, but in reality I was just hurting others and myself. I asked a girl out on the sly one night. We went to a small bar and had a few drinks. We drank and drank until late. Later, I went to the girl's house to spend the night. I didn't realize that my girlfriend had come to that bar that night as well. I don't know why she came or where she saw us. She didn't expose me on the spot. The next day, she asked me, "Where did I go last night?" I said, "I was drinking with a company colleague." She was angry and asked me why I was dating another girl. I felt so ashamed and sad, I knew I had done wrong. She said she couldn't trust me anymore and broke up with me. I was so sad and lost, and I knew I had caused it. When I saw this scene, I felt very remorseful and ashamed, but the angel didn't blame me. The angel told me that everyone makes mistakes and that it is important to learn from them. After hearing the angel's words, I felt much better and more confident to face my future life. The angel continued. When you come to heaven, you will see your life on earth. This review is not to judge your past, but to help you review the meaning of your life and have a more comprehensive knowledge of your actions. It is a process of self-censorship, where you will see your good and bad. But no matter what you have done, you will not be judged here, because in heaven we believe that everyone has value and we accept everyone for who they are. The angels also told me that everyone has a place in heaven where they belong. The location depends on one's experience and growth on earth. Each person's place is unique. They are here to continue their journey of growth and to know themselves and the universe in a more profound way. I felt very blown away, and this place made me feel very calm and comfortable. The angels took me on a tour of this beautiful place. I saw all kinds of wonderful sights. I saw a lot of wonderful architecture, and billowing clouds and gorgeous rainbows. Everything here was so beautiful and peaceful. When I walked up to a house, I was fascinated by the sight of the yard. The inside of the yard was full of harmony and beauty. I saw an old man sitting in the garden. He was surrounded by some people who were chatting happily and seemed to be very happy. This old man had a happy and contented smile on his face. His eyes were full of warmth and care. I could feel his kindness and wisdom. There was a group of small children playing under the tree, and they didn't seem to have any worries. They were playing various games. These little children were enjoying the good time without any worries, and their faces were full of innocence and naivety. In the yard there are some small animals. They are walking around freely, enjoying this wonderful world. There is a little rabbit eating grass. There is also a small squirrel jumping in the tree. The whole picture is full of harmony and warmth. This yard seems to be a paradise of contentment and happiness. Here, I felt myself become more calm and relaxed, and my body and mind were greatly soothed. It was a wonderful moment that one cannot forget. I asked the angel if I could live in heaven. He looked at me with a smile and nodded his head, stating that I would be given eternal life and enjoy this wonderful piece of heaven with others. I felt very glad and grateful to hear this affirmative answer. A warm feeling welled up in my heart, as if I was already soaring freely in heaven, enjoying endless happiness and peace. I saw the angel's expression begin to turn serious. My heart began to feel a little heavy. He told me that although I would come to heaven at some point in the future, for now I had to return to earth. There, I still had my own tasks and responsibilities to fulfill. I felt a little sorry to hear this explanation. I wanted to stay, but I also understood that I had to return to real life to complete my mission and responsibilities. I nodded to the angel to show that I understood what he meant. Then I was taken back to the scene of the crash by the angel. My soul returned to my body. My breathing became very rapid and the scene in front of me was still so blurry. The angel gently lifted me up, helped me adjust my breathing, and kept me awake as long as possible. His hand gently patted my back to help me relax my body and my mood. With the angel's help, my breathing slowly began to settle down and I gradually recalled the scene when the accident happened. I felt some soreness in my body, but fortunately, I was not hurt too much. The angel was by my side constantly offering comfort and encouragement, making me feel that I was not alone and helpless. He told me to stay awake and calm. Soon the ambulance arrived on the scene. As I was carried into the ambulance, the rescuers immediately treated me. The doctors carefully examined my body condition. They treated the wound very professionally, which made me feel very relieved. As I was being treated by the doctors, I turned around and saw that the angel was still by my side. His gaze was full of concern and warmth. He waved goodbye to me and slowly disappeared with a smile on his face. Although the angel had told me the reason why I had to return to earth, I still felt some loss and reluctance. I knew the angel was there to help me, and he gave me the courage and confidence to face the challenges in my life. When the ambulance arrived at the hospital, the doctors and nurses quickly moved me to the emergency room. With the help of the medical staff, I recovered quickly. I knew that angels were always with me. After this experience, I began to appreciate every good moment in my life more. Work harder to follow my dreams and goals. Because I know that whether in heaven or on earth, we should have a brave and determined heart to meet every miracle and challenge in life. As a pastor, my daily work is very busy, but also very rewarding. Every weekend, I would bring Bible teaching and revelation to the believers at church. I would prepare interesting stories and examples so that people could better understand the truths in the Bible. Besides that, I would also conduct other services in the church, such as weddings, funerals, etc. In these occasions, I will provide spiritual support and comfort to the participants. I will also frequently communicate with other pastors and believers in order to share experiences and learn from them. In addition to these main tasks, I also need to manage the day-to-day operations of the church, including budget management, recruiting volunteers, and maintaining the church building. These tasks are also important because they help ensure that the church can continue its religious activities and services. All in all, my day-to-day work as a pastor is challenging and busy, but also very rewarding and fun. I feel that the work I do helps others and contributes to the community, which is one of the reasons I enjoy my job so much. It wasn't until I experienced an incident that gave me a whole new perspective on what my job means. One afternoon, I received a phone call from an unknown person. The voice on the other end of the line was anxious and told me that his father was in the hospital and was not doing well. He wanted to see a priest before he died. I understood the situation very well, as it was part of my job. I asked the person for his father's name and the address of the hospital and then told him I would get there as soon as possible. I immediately began packing my things and getting ready to rush to the hospital. I opened my drawer and pulled out a Bible. I grabbed my car keys and walked out the door. I got into the driver's seat. I felt very nervous because I knew it was an emergency and I had to get to the hospital as soon as possible. I looked at the map, found the shortest route, and started driving to the hospital. At an intersection, I saw that the red light was on, so I stopped. I knew I needed to wait for the light to turn green before I could proceed, so I waited. When the light came on green, I was ready to move on. But, as I was about to go, I suddenly felt my car get hit. I lost control of my car. I tried to control the direction of my vehicle, but it hit a vehicle traveling in the opposite direction, causing a serious crash. I felt very painful and dizzy. At this time, passers-by spotted me. They approached my car, asked about my condition, and called the police to contact an ambulance to come. I heard the ambulance, but due to the severity of my injuries, I had passed out. I don't know what happened after that. When I regained consciousness again, I found myself in a white tunnel. My body was painless and I felt very relaxed. I was very confused. What was this place? I found that there were many other souls here as well. I tried to go forward, but there seemed to be no end. I began to feel fear and anxiety. A spirit approached me and said, "Welcome to this place, my friend." I nodded and asked, somewhat puzzled, "What is this place? Why have I come here?" The spirit smiled and replied, "This is the land of light, and you have come here because your life has ended, and now you can enjoy eternal peace here." I asked him, "What should we do next?" He replied, "Nothing needs to be done. Just wait for the gates of heaven to open." Just then, a huge door appeared in front of me. As I gazed at the gates of heaven, I felt my heart beat faster. I knew this was going to be an amazing experience. Suddenly, the gate began to open slowly. Through the doorway, a bright light shone in my face. It made me feel warm and peaceful. The color of the light was very pure, without a trace of impurities. All the fear and anxiety disappeared. I followed the other souls into the light. I felt the weight on me completely disappear, as if I had become an invisible energy and entered a new realm with the other souls. As I stepped into the other side of the door, my vision was instantly filled with a vast and glorious sight. I saw an endless green meadow scattered with all kinds of flowers. The golden rays of the sun poured down on me, making me feel warm and joyful. I gazed at the world and heard the sound of laughter. The moment other souls entered the gates of heaven, they put on white robes. Nothing changed for me, and I felt a little confused. I didn't know where to go next. The other souls wore white robes and all seemed to know where to go. They flew freely in all directions, as if they had returned to their respective homes. I, however, did not know which direction to go. The sight of heaven was so beautiful that I seemed to be lost in this wonderful world. The light of the sun shone on me and I felt overwhelmed with happiness, but also a little lonely and helpless. I started to explore around, hoping to find some clues. I wanted to understand the order and rules of this world. I saw some souls participating in celebrations and some enjoying beautiful music. I tried to approach them, but I could not join their circle. I seemed to lack some special talent or gift. Suddenly, I saw a dazzling light appear in front of me. As the light faded, I recognized that the figure was Jesus. I was a little dumbfounded because I did not expect to see Jesus in heaven. He looked very gracious, and his gaze revealed an endless love and forgiveness. I stood there, and I didn't know what to say. Jesus smiled and welcomed me. He knew all about me, my joys and my pains, and he accepted all my faults and mistakes, giving me a deep sense of comfort and peace. We strolled together through the gardens of heaven and my heart was filled with emotion. At that moment, I knew that I was loved and that I would never be alone because he would always be with me. As we enjoyed the beauty of the garden, we talked about my life and work. Jesus asked me with concern, "How do you usually work?" I replied, "I work hard and try to do my best because I know God will help us overcome difficulties. I reach out to others and tell them that God is omnipotent. I encourage them to pray to God and trust in His power and mercy because He will bring us strength and revelation." Jesus smiled and nodded. But I felt as if he was a little dissatisfied. He then asked me, "Do you think God is an all-powerful God?" I answered, somewhat hesitantly, "Yes, I think God is omnipotent, and He can help me overcome any difficulty." Jesus' expression became somewhat serious as he said, "My child, while it is true that God is all-powerful, He also expects you to take responsibility for your own life and work. You need to take responsibility for your own decisions and actions, rather than simply relying on God's power." I was so amazed that I began to reflect on my past decisions and actions. I was grateful that he had pointed this out to me. I knew that Jesus' words were out of concern and love for me. Jesus looked at me slightly and then said gently, "My child, not everyone is in trouble and I can help them." I asked Jesus why he could not help all who needed help. Jesus explained to me that every person's experience and destiny is different. Even praying for God's strength will not solve the problem. Jesus told me that His power and compassion are unlimited, but sometimes He wants us to also rely on our own strength and wisdom to face difficulties and challenges. He encouraged me to trust in my own abilities and to actively seek solutions to problems. I probably understood what he meant. Although God is omnipotent, we also need to rely on our own strength and wisdom to solve problems. We can't just rely on the strength of others, but we need to actively look for solutions to our problems. Jesus, however, told me that I had to go back now and that my mission was not yet complete. Feeling somewhat confused and puzzled, I asked Jesus what my mission was. He didn't answer my question directly. He told me that I must continue to follow my faith and values and do my best to bring warmth and help to others. I must go back and continue to play my role. To live up to my potential, both in work and in life. Strive to make this world a better place. Although I didn't want to leave heaven, I listened to Jesus' words. He sent me to the tunnel. I walked toward the tunnel, feeling like I was floating in the air along the way, unencumbered by gravity. The light in the tunnel changed, sometimes shining brightly and sometimes becoming soft and comforting. I kept walking along the tunnel and eventually reached the end. There, I felt my body begin to descend until I was back inside my body. When I opened my eyes, I found myself lying on a hospital bed surrounded by some white walls and equipment. I felt a great pain in my head. I saw my family and doctors waiting by the bedside for me to wake up. They had concerned looks on their faces and were relieved to see me wake up, expressing their care and concern. The doctor told me that I only had a mild concussion. I needed to rest in the hospital for a while. I felt very grateful because it meant I hadn't suffered any more serious injuries. Over the next few days, I spent time resting and recovering in the hospital. My family and friends came to visit me and brought me flowers, which made me feel very warm. After what I went through, my understanding of God changed in a whole new way. I understood that God is indeed all-powerful, but that not every prayer we make will necessarily be answered. I began to think about why this was the case. I realized it's not because God doesn't care about us or can't help us, but because our prayers don't always line up with God's will. God doesn't answer my prayers in the way we expect. Because He has a deeper understanding and plan for our future. I no longer see God as an all-powerful God who meets my needs, but as a wise Creator. I began to learn to accept His will. I also learned to trust that God has His own arrangements and plans when facing some setbacks and difficulties. Through my contact with Jesus and constant reflection and study, I became more deeply aware of the holiness of God. I learned to live each day with gratitude and optimism, with faith and hope in God and in my own life. Shortly after my recovery, I began to return to my normal life. I began to think and change the way I worked. I no longer preached that God was the Almighty God and that I should pray to God when I encountered any difficulties, as I had done before. Instead, I began to see things from a more practical perspective. I began to focus more on my actions and practices, rather than just relying on prayer to solve problems. Also, I stopped preaching God's teachings in a traditional way and focused more on delivering the message through action. I began to do more charitable work and help more people with difficult problems in their lives. In the process, I also began to show more of my faith and values, so that others could feel God's presence and His love in my words and actions.